Miss Jane Austen kept no diary or journals. She was not a public figure whose exploits would regularly appear in newspapers or other historical records. What we know of Jane's life comes chiefly from the many letters she exchanged with Cassandra, her older sister and closest companion. Austen spent almost all of her life in the small social circle of her family and her village in the quiet English countryside. How, then, do we explain how her novels show such rare insight into the complexities of human nature? Austen was able to compose incisive social commentary through her keen observations. It took a special kind of genius. Jane Austen, one of 8 children, was born in 1775 in Steventon, a small village in Hampshire, England. Jane's parents were both from well-respected families, part of the landed gentry. The Austens did not lead extravagant lives, however. Jane's father was a rector of the church in Steventon, as well as a private tutor. His efforts provided a small income, enough for the Austen family to live comfortably and to send some of their children to school. When Jane was 7, she and her sister Cassandra were sent to live with a relative who was a private tutor, but both girls fell ill with typhus. Jane almost died. This early brush with death may have affected Jane's health for the rest of her life, but Cassandra is thought to have destroyed most of the letters mentioning details of Jane's health. In 1785, Jane and Cassandra attempted another brief stint at formal education at a boarding school where young ladies were taught suitable subjects such as drawing, needlework, and French. But by 1786, the girls returned home for lack of funds. Fortunately, Jane's family had an extensive library, and Jane was an avid reader. Jane's education was now in her own hands, and she read widely from her family's library. Her father and older brothers encouraged her, and Jane was never without paper for writing, and an eager audience for her juvenilia. Written from 1787 to 1793, these were Austen's early attempts at writing plays, poems, and even short novels, while still in her teens. One of these works is an epistolary novel, a story told in letters, called Love and Friendship, which hints at some of the scenarios to come in her later novels. Another of her earliest works is a witty retelling of the history of England, complete with watercolor illustrations provided by her sister Cassandra. Between 1795 and 1799, when Jane Austen was in her early 20s, she began work on 3 of her full-length novels: First Impressions, which would later become known as Pride and Prejudice, Eleanor and Marianne, later renamed Sense and Sensibility, and Susan, which was later titled Northanger Abbey. Jane's father brought the early Pride and Prejudice manuscript to a publisher, who refused to even look at it. In the year 1800, Jane Austen's life changed unexpectedly. Her father decided to retire from his position as church rector, and the family moved to Bath, an elegant resort town where, as Austen observed in her novel Persuasion, a family of reduced circumstances could live comparatively well and still go out into society. While Jane was previously known to enjoy going to parties and balls, the move to Bath sent her into a depression. Austen wrote little while in Bath, although she did sell Northanger Abbey for the princely sum of £10. Inexplicably, the publisher chose to not print it. The Austen circumstances were further reduced upon the sudden death of Jane's father in 1805. The pension he was receiving from the church promptly ceased, and Jane became dependent on her brothers for a place to live. Jane, her mother, and her sister Cassandra came to reside once more in Hampshire, in a small village close to her childhood home. Years later, Jane would recount these series of events with the phrase, "What happy feelings of escape!" Freed from the oppressive influence of Bath society, Jane once more began to write in earnest. The next several years were the most productive of Austen's life. After revising Sense and Sensibility, Austen found a publisher to take it on. The first edition appeared in 1811, not under Jane's own name, but by a lady. The first edition of the novel sold out, earning Austen £140 and some much-needed financial stability. Jane took this as a good sign and revised Pride and Prejudice as well, and it was published in 1813. Next came Mansfield Park, published in 1814, then Emma in 1815. Her last complete novel, Persuasion, was finished in 1816, but ill health had descended once more upon Miss Austen. We can only speculate on Jane Austen's final illness. There are signs it could have been complications from her early bout with typhus. or it might have been Addison's disease, or lymphoma coupled with a long-standing immune deficiency. Whatever the ailment, it was beyond the reach of medical help. Jane Austen died on July 18, 1817, at the age of 41. She was buried in Winchester Cathedral, where her memorial recognized the benevolence of her heart, the sweetness of her temper, and the extraordinary endowments of her mind. Only after her death was it made publicly known that Jane was the author of 4 well-known novels. Jane Austen's obituary named her as the author of Emma, Mansfield Park, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility. Northanger Abbey and Persuasion would be published after Jane's death. Minus a brief, shameful interlude when her novels fell out of print for 12 years, they have been published continuously ever since.